I woke up to a nightmare I didn't see coming. My hands were clammy, my head groggy, and the room smelled like antiseptic. But it wasn't the surgery that made my heart race. It was the notifications blinking across my locked phone. 37 missed alerts. 37. And every single one was a warning. $68,000 gone. Just like that. In the haze of anesthesia, I tried to piece it together. How could this happen while I was literally under sedation? How could someone take that much from me, so quickly, without me even knowing? But before we continue, please subscribe and turn on the notification bell for updates. My name is Emma Davis, I'm 34, and I never thought betrayal could look like this. Not from him. Not from Ryan. My husband, 36, someone I trusted with my life, had decided to disappear into a whirlwind of European luxury while I lay in a hospital bed. He didn't even have the decency to wait until I was awake. Flights booked in first class, luxury hotels in Rome, Paris, Venice, all charged to my credit card. Every alert on my phone screamed the same thing. Someone had crossed a line that couldn't be uncrossed. I tried to call, but my phone was locked in a hospital drawer. I couldn't reach anyone. I couldn't stop the spending. And each beep of the alerts made my stomach drop lower, twisting with fear, confusion, and a strange, sharp punch of disbelief. This wasn't just theft. It was audacity. And it was personal. I kept imagining him mid-flight, champagne in hand, lounging in first class, sending me pictures like it was some sick joke. And then, 3 days later, he did just that. A photo appeared in my inbox. Ryan, smiling, posing like nothing had happened, with the caption, "Relax. You'll be fine." What would you do if you were me? Would you cry? Scream? Laugh in disbelief? Because that's exactly what I did. I started laughing. And not the nervous kind. The kind that bubbles up when reality is too absurd, too twisted, to handle. But what made me laugh so hard was the one thing he didn't realize. The one detail that would change everything he thought he knew. And that's when it hit me. The credit card he used wasn't what he thought it was. But what came next would change everything, and no one saw it coming. I thought surgery was supposed to be routine. Just a minor procedure, something I had mentally prepped for weeks. I even joked with Ryan in the hospital room that I'd probably be home by dinner. But when I woke up, the first thing I noticed wasn't the dull ache in my arm or the lingering fog of anesthesia. It was the relentless buzzing from my phone locked in that stupid hospital drawer. My heart sank as I imagined what I would find. By the time I got my hands on it, the truth hit me like a punch to the gut. 37 missed alerts. $68,000. Gone. All gone. My mind raced. I couldn't even process it at first. How? Why? I replayed the past few hours in my head, the blur of nurses, machines, and sterile walls. And then it hit me. The purchases weren't small or accidental. They were extravagant, first-class flights to Paris and Rome, luxury hotel bookings with rooftop views, Michelin-star dinners, private tours. Someone had decided to live like royalty on my card. And then I saw the first image from Ryan. A smug, self-satisfied grin in first class. Champagne in hand. Relax. You'll be fine, he typed. The audacity. The sheer nerve. I felt a mix of betrayal, anger, and disbelief. This was more than a theft of money. This was a theft of trust. A violation of every promise I thought we had. I couldn't help asking myself, and maybe you too, what would you do in that moment? Call the bank? Call the police? Confront him immediately? I didn't know what to do. I just stared at the photo, my mind a whirlwind of scenarios. And yet, a small, almost cruel part of me couldn't help noticing the irony. Here he was, mid-flight, thinking he had pulled off the ultimate heist, completely oblivious to one crucial detail I hadn't discovered yet. As I pieced together the timeline, the flight bookings, the hotel confirmations, the extravagant excursions, I realized how carefully he had planned this. Or had he? Some part of me wondered if he had thought it through at all, or if this was just impulsive, reckless behavior, the kind that makes you both furious and terrified. But even as I sat there, enraged and shaking, a chilling thought crept into my mind. What else had he done while I was unconscious? What else was waiting to be uncovered once I started digging into the aftermath of this betrayal? And that's when I found the first clue that suggested this wasn't just about money. It was about something far more personal. I always knew Ryan could be impulsive. He liked the thrill of doing things on a whim, sometimes charming, sometimes infuriating. But this was a level of reckless audacity I had never imagined. As I sat in my hospital room, scrolling through every single transaction, I started to piece together the scope of his spree. Flights, hotels, private tours, fine dining, all meticulously planned, all charged to my credit card. It wasn't random. He had mapped it out, as if he were designing a vacation for himself, while I lay unconscious, completely unaware. The more I dug, the more absurd it became. There was a hotel in Venice that cost more per night than my entire month's rent. Flights between cities booked in first class, champagne included. Even a luxury train ride in the Italian countryside had a receipt attached to my card. I almost laughed, except for the pit in my stomach that reminded me this was my money. My hard-earned savings. And the worst part? He thought he was untouchable. He was living out some private fantasy while I was trapped in recovery, powerless to stop him. But the real shock came when I started cross-checking his messages. Every picture he sent, every caption, every smug little note, they revealed more than just audacity. There was a twisted sense of pride, like he wanted me to see how clever he was, how untouchable he felt. Relax. You'll be fine, he'd said. It was mocking, almost playful, as if the betrayal wasn't serious at all. I could feel the anger bubbling up again, but underneath it was something darker, fear. Fear of what else he might do, fear of the cracks I was starting to see in the marriage I thought was stable. And then came the contradiction that made me stop dead in my tracks. One of the charges didn't make sense. I checked the balance. The card had been canceled months earlier. Ryan had been spending on a card that couldn't even pay for his lavish escape. He didn't know it, but everything he had done, the flights, the hotels, the private tours, was essentially a grand illusion. I couldn't help but smirk at the thought. He had planned this elaborate escape, and yet it was completely useless. But even as I laughed, a chilling thought crept in. If he could be so careless about money, what about the rest? What else could he be capable of while thinking no one was watching? And that's when I received the next message from him, one that would leave me reeling in a way I never expected. I couldn't believe what I was seeing. After days of panic, outrage, and sleepless nights, the truth hit me like a punchline in a dark comedy. Ryan had spent 3 days gallivanting through Europe, thinking he was living the dream, only to discover, too late, that the credit card he had used wasn't active. Months ago, I had canceled it, moving the balance to a new account. Every extravagant hotel, every first-class flight, every single euro he had spent was essentially nothing. He had been planning an empire of indulgence on a ghost. I laughed. I started laughing in the middle of my hospital room, alone, while nurses bustled around me. Not the nervous kind of laugh, but the kind that shakes your whole body because reality is so absurd, so ridiculously ironic, that it almost hurts. The betrayal was real, yes. The audacity undeniable. But the joke? It was entirely on him. I imagined him mid-flight, finally checking the app, the realization hitting him like a brick. His smug grin replaced with confusion. His first-class champagne suddenly bitter. I could almost hear the mental collapse. And yet, underneath the humor, there was a thread of anger, sharper than before. How could he think so little of me to pull something so reckless? To treat our finances, our trust, like a game? I realized, painfully, that marriage isn't just about love or companionship. It's about the small, quiet agreements we make with each other, and how devastating it feels when someone tramples them. I messaged him back, careful to keep my tone calm, almost casual, knowing he had no idea the punchline of this story. Relax. You'll be fine, I typed, mimicking his own words, because you didn't actually spend a cent. The silence on his end was deafening. And in that moment, I felt a surge of power I hadn't experienced in days. I wasn't just a victim of his audacity. I had the upper hand. But as I stared at my phone, smiling, a new question began to gnaw at me. If he could be so reckless with money, with deception, with audacity, what else might he do? The trip was over, but the game wasn't finished. There was one final truth lurking beneath all the chaos. A truth about trust, about betrayal, about human nature that I hadn't uncovered yet. And that's when I realized this wasn't just a story about money. It was a story about the fine line between love, insanity, and absolute audacity. By the time Ryan finally returned home, the drama had already played out in my mind 100 times. I had gone from disbelief to anger to laughter, and now, finally, to a sort of icy calm. The $68,000 he thought he had stolen? Never actually touched. The first-class flights, luxury hotels, private dinners? All a fantasy built on a canceled card. And yet, the audacity of it all lingered like a shadow in the room. I looked at him, 36, still smug, still half expecting me to be impressed. I wasn't. I sat him down, my voice calm but firm, and laid it out, every transaction, every outrageous booking, every ridiculous picture he had sent. And then I told him the truth he had no idea about. The card was canceled. The money didn't exist. The empire he had thought he was building had been a castle of smoke. He went pale. I watched the realization settle in like a slow fog. There was no witty comeback, no charm to save him. Just silence and a lesson finally learned the hard way. I couldn't help but reflect on the absurdity of the whole situation. Marriage, I realized, isn't just about love or companionship. It's about trust, small agreements, and respect. And when one person treats those as optional, the consequences can be both devastating and, sometimes, ridiculous. Ryan had tried to live out a fantasy, thinking no one was watching. I had thought I was powerless, trapped by my own recovery. And yet, in the end, reality had a way of balancing the scales, with a heavy dose of irony. So here I am, telling this story to you. Not because I want sympathy, and not because I expect judgment. But because it's a story about human audacity, about how betrayal can come dressed in luxury, and about the strange way life can flip the script when you least expect it. What would you do if someone you trusted tried something so reckless? Would you cry, scream, laugh, or just shake your head in disbelief? The real takeaway isn't just the money, or even the betrayal. It's the reminder that audacity can be funny, betrayal can be ironic, and sometimes, the biggest shocks in life come wrapped in champagne and first-class tickets. As for Ryan, well, let's just say he learned the hard way that no fantasy built on someone else's trust lasts forever. If you've ever experienced someone pulling off a stunt so bold it left you speechless, leave your story in the comments. Because sometimes, the craziest truths are the ones we all need to hear.